We had been living in our house for the past nearly 10 years. Not much of a house, but the neighborhood is nice, and the price was right when we bought it. We have grown accustomed to all of our neighbors. We always say hello in passing and have never had any other issues. That is until recently. An old man had been living in the house behind our property for as long as we could remember. Yet, in the whole time we had been living there, we had never really spoke to him. He minded his own business and we minded ours. He never gave us a problem. In the beginning, I would wave and say hi when he was outside, but he never really responded. I just figured maybe he was hard of hearing or maybe he didn't want to have a conversation. In his yard was a big apple tree. I remember trying to start a conversation one day about how beautiful the tree was. He just continued about his gardening. I explained how my wife loves apples, and how she used to have an apple tree in her backyard as well growing up. He would nod, but he wouldn't speak. The day after our conversation, I found a plastic bag filled with the most beautiful looking fresh apples. I had figured that maybe he actually was listening to me. I saw him a few days later and thanked him for the apples. But again, he didn't really speak. As the years went by, my attempts to speak with him became fewer, as I didn't want to bother him. However, every few weeks, we would find a plastic bag filled with apples that was left on our side of the fence. Again, I would thank him, but he didn't want to converse. Last week, I was shocked to see that the windows of his house were all boarded up. I asked my wife if she had any idea or had heard anything about the situation. We figured that maybe he had been evicted. Upon speaking to some neighbors, we found out that he actually passed away. I felt a bit of remorse upon hearing this news. Maybe I should have talked to him more. A few days passed by, and normal life continued, to the point where I hadn't even thought much about him. That is until a few nights ago. I was up working on some paperwork well past the time I usually call it a night. I looked at the clock and saw it was nearly 3 a.m. I decided I would have one cigarette and then head to bed. I went outside. It was a chilly night. The breeze whispered among the trees. My eyes wandered into the old man's backyard, and again, I felt remorse. I looked at the boarded-up windows and sighed. I took a few more long drags before bending down to put out the half-smoked cigarette. Upon getting up, I gazed once more into the old man's yard. Standing in the middle of the yard was a figure. The sight caused me to step backwards. I moved quickly into my house. My heart raced. I shut the back door and locked it. I looked out through the window of the door, and again, I saw the figure. This time, he was standing in my backyard, right next to my garage. I searched my pockets for my cell phone as I moved away from the locked door. I frantically looked around the room. Where is that phone? My search was cut short by the sound of the screen door being pulled open. My eyes stayed fixed upon the back door. Suddenly, the handle began to move. I was frantic. I looked around for the closest object that could provide protection. But then, the handle stopped moving. I felt a short moment of relief. I waited a few seconds and then moved back toward the door. I didn't want to, but I forced myself to peek out the window. Nothing. I didn't get much sleep that night. I told my wife what had happened, but she found my story more humorous than concerning. I walked outside the next day, and sitting by my garage was a bag. I grabbed the bag and looked inside. 5 freshly picked apples.